Oh boy, is this one going to be fun because we get to talk about the Atlanta Falcons. It's the NFC South draft to recap. It is the Audible, Cecil Lammy, and Sigmund Bloom. And if you'll allow me to rant
Mm,
immediately,
mhm,
Sigmund,
mhm.
because Michael Penix, the shocking pick, heard round the world. And well, James Palmer knew for 3 weeks, couldn't say anything, and then broke it on our airwaves. And I'm sitting right next to him going, okay, Michael Penix. And people, oh, this is terrible. And then I understand Mike McCartney, and I've told the story before. I really like Mike. I love his father, love his family. He doesn't like me. That's fine. It doesn't matter to me. But he's protecting this client when he's coming out. Like Kirk didn't even know. Like poor Kirk Cousins. That's all bogus. I know some stuff behind the scenes. Like Kirk's kind of a problem. If things don't go his way in Minnesota, let's just say Minnesota was okay with him finding another place. Oh, he's Kirk Cousins. What's he won? What's he won? Right? And you've got an owner in Arthur Blank. And yes, Arthur Blank has his fingerprints on this team, not in a Dave Tepper or Jerry Jones type of way, but he is a presence that is there. He wants to win a championship, before his time on this in this realm is done,
Right,
Bloom. We
right.
can get crunchy. So
Yeah.
this Penix thing, and Penix can absolutely flip and sling it. Like we all got to stop acting like Michael Penix was overdrafted or can't play. Like you take away the injuries, he might be the number one pick in a quarterback rich class. He can absolutely sling it. Now it's ugly because it's left-handed and sidearm, but he knows where to put it. He can get it there in a hurry. He's a leader. His teammates love him. I did ask him about his work ethic because there were the rumblings that in Indiana they couldn't get him in the weight room. Well, they got him in the weight room in Washington. He was healthy there. So this whole like poor Kirk Cousins stuff, I can't wait to hear what you say about it.
Yeah.
Let's get through the rest of the draft for them because it's more
Right,
than just
right.
Penix. But Ruka Ororo, Clemson defensive tackle. God, I hope I didn't mess that up. Braylon Trice, not Obi Trice.
Mm.
Washington Edge. I made that joke a few times on Friday. Brandon Dorius, Oregon defensive tackle. In the fourth and the fifth, it's J.D. Bertrand, Notre Dame linebacker. Jace McClellan, Alabama running back. In the sixth, Casey Washington, Illinois wide receiver. In the sixth, saw him at the Shrine Bowl. Talk about him. Zion Logue to wrap it up, Georgia defensive tackle. So you see what they did with three defensive tackles selected, but they got a quarterback that can absolutely sling it. And no one's guaranteeing Kirk Cousins, health. It's an Achilles. Not everyone's Tommy Brady or Vinny Testaverde. I'm not saying Cousins is done, but I'm just like, all right, everyone, please stop overreacting with this pick. Poor Kirk Cousins, Bloom.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's a lot to say here,
Yes.
but at the same
Say
time,
it with your chest.
well, no, that there's a lot of it has already been said, I think that look, this is just if Penix can play, it's a good trade. I mean, a good trade, a good pick. And if he can't, it's not. And it's just that simple. All right. It's not the worst pick
Oh
ever.
my God.
It's not horrible process.
Terrible.
It's we evaluated this guy. We think he's a franchise quarterback. And Kirk Cousins, even if he hits, is only 2 years really on this contract. And let's remember this, okay? I'll just toss this out there as another angle on this, okay? If you can look at Dane Brugler's first mock draft for 2025, he has Quinn Ewers going in the first round to the Steelers. The Steelers are going to sign Justin Fields to a second contract long before the draft next year, and we're all going to be happy, right? Uh, so Quinn Ewers, who has been far from a best case scenario in college, if Dane Brugler is projecting him, and Dane Brugler is not saying, I think he's a first round pick, that just the way it looks right now, he probably would get in the first round because there's
Yes.
not much at quarterback next year.
Right.
There ain't much. So maybe part of the reason 6 teams took quarterbacks in the top 12 is because of that. These teams are looking ahead. And it's not difficult to put together a list of teams, which may or may not include Pittsburgh, that has 8 teams deep that are going to need quarterbacks next year. And maybe there's going to be 1 or 2 that are above the Bo Nix line from this year. So just maybe, Cease, just maybe, Kirk Cousins can have trade value. If Kirk Cousins gets out there and balls out this year, and Penix is ready, maybe he has trade value, strong trade value, good trade value.
Mm-hmm.
How would the tenor on this pick change if they can flip Cousins for like a second-day pick next year? Penix takes over and is good and playing on a rookie contract. How brilliant does this look?
Mm-hmm.
Well, you just signed this guy and you drafted someone. Well, okay, that's a plan. That's a plan at quarterback. So, I've had enough of this. What I mean by that is like it's already been talked. Well, because see, Penix is the perfect pick to illustrate my little word craft about the draft. It's like getting to travel into the future and see the future, but not understand what you're looking at, and having to go back to the present and just live in real time. And then eventually, like, oh, that's what that all meant when I got to look at the future for a second. So the
Hey,
future is Michael Penix. Is it a future where we dunk on Atlanta and Terry Fontenot? Or is it a future where we say, wow, after all that, after all the consternation, he actually did the right thing? It's up to Penix. And interestingly, it looks like out of some of the video that's been released from War Room seats, that Terry Fontenot tried to trade up to number 10 and to get Latu. So, a lot of people had them taking an edge at 8. And that tells me Terry Fontenot's like, I'm bulletproof now. Give me next year's first. Let's get it all hands on deck, because
they can
then,
get it back.
and see, if you want to actually malign Fontenot for a move, it's trading up for Rook Orororo. Row your boat. Orororo. And okay, this is a guy, Rook Orororo. He has all the athletic qualities you want, and he could end up being a very good defensive tackle, but you move up from 43 to 35, you give up the pick you got for Calvin Ridley, one of the picks, for a project. I mean, this wasn't a horrible reach, but do you really need, moving up to the 4th pick of the 2nd round? I get it. You resort your board and you have this guy that you had as a 1st round quality pick. I don't know about that. To get Braylon Trice in the 3rd round, so they do get an edge. He's got hands, he's got power, he's got a motor. Not your classic turn the corner, bendy speed rusher, but you can still use that guy. Dorless, another guy, very similar to Orororo. Inconsistent, but can play a lot of places on the defensive line, can create some pressure. He's athletic, he's big. Can you coach him up? J.D. Bertrand is, when we saw the Cowboys take Marist Leofau, who was athletic, but maybe needs to be reined in. Bertrand is kind of the opposite, where he's tough, he's got instincts, he's a leader, but he's not ideal physically. See who's the better player. They got him a couple rounds after the Cowboys took Leofau. Jace McClellan, this is your Tyler Algier backup, basically. Not a lot of versatility, a good inside runner, and that's why he fell, even though he was an Alabama running back. Washington's got speed and hands. To unlock the speed and hands, you maybe need a little more routes and polish. Again, why is he a 3rd-day pick? And Logan's is just a snap eater, but a 2-gapper. You can use those guys. This draft's going to be about Penix, and that's fine. It's fine. Penix, a lefty Phillip Rivers, if you will. I understand why you would say, hey, we're a good team. We're not going to have a chance to get back into the top 10, top 15 for a quarterback. And we may not be able to get a quarterback we want anyway. So let's take the quarterback we want now and let's let it play out.
Yeah, not much for UDFA's what Isaiah Wooden, Southern
Right.
Utah wide receiver, super fast, kind of small. Anyway, what do you see?
Yeah, they drafted Spud Webb. He's 5'7", right? He's 5'7", Muggsy Bogues. He's 5'7" and runs a 4.35 with a 44-inch vert. So get him in the dunk contest.
Yeah, there you go. Get Carolina up next as we continue on. The only time during Dave Tepper's ownership, the Carolina Panthers will have the number 32 overall pick. It's not gonna happen with Tepper running the show. Anyway, 32, they move back because they don't have a 1st rounder because they give it up. There you go, Caleb Williams. All right, it's Xavier Legette. Now, for everyone that loves Spencer Rattler, and oh my God, I still have to hear about Spencer Rattler. Like, okay, nothing he does is special. But when he was throwing it to Xavier Legette, that was special because that kid is big and he's fast, and he's physical, and that's why Carolina, when Buffalo keeps moving back, they go up and they get their guy. Jonathan Brooks breaking Jerry Jones's heart which might have been Dave Tepper's whole impetus for going after Jonathan Brooks. But that's a damn good runner, arguably the best runner in this class in the second round. So they get him to mix into that backfield. Trevin Wallace, Kentucky linebacker in the third. Jatavian Sanders, very interesting move tight end, basically a wide receiver at the tight end position in the fourth. Certainly breaking some hearts when Sanders goes off the board so early on day 3. Shaw Smith Wade, Washington State cornerback there in the fifth. Jaden Crumedy, Mississippi State defensive tackle in the sixth. And the seventh round, Michael Barrett, Michigan linebacker. Let's talk about Carolina.
Yeah. No first round pick. They get back into the first round. Xavier Legette. By the way, is it going to become a tradition for us just funning on Dave Tepper? You see the thing about him going into the restaurant that
Yes.
had and taking the hat off of the guy.
Yeah.
Well, you better watch. You better watch. I don't care how much money you're worth. You take the hat off someone's head. That's like fighting words, you know.
Yeah. It's sad. It's a sad
and
situation.
and there's also this talk about Tepper likes to critique the play calls. Yeah. So, and you look at this draft, the Dan Morgan's first draft. Okay, Legette. We're trading back into the first. And what's interesting here is across two regimes, isn't this Jonathan Mingo all over again? He's big and he can move and he's fast. Can he get open? We'll see. And then, hey, I like this maneuver, Dan Morgan. I like this maneuver where they go down from 39 to 52. They collect up the Rams' second round pick next year, and then they come back up, and they got 2 fifths. So they just trade one of those fifths to go back up and get Brooks. Brooks, best running back in this draft. So, not a great landing spot in terms of does this organization maximize the outcome for offensive players? But Brooks is going to be a rare breed at this point of a 3-down back. They get Wallace, all the athleticism, all the traits you want in a linebacker. Does he understand what he's looking at and make good reads and reactions? Maybe we'll get there.
One day.
I mean, okay, they get Jatavian Sanders, a big receiving tight end. They gave up a fifth to get Baker Mayfield, but they got one back in the Christian McCaffrey trade. So they get Smith Wade, good mover, a tough player, slot corner. Again, why is he on third day? Not ideal measurables. They give up a 6 for Laviska Shenault. Again, we go through the draft. I go through this history of the picks that the teams have just to think about some of the mistakes that in the previous regime. So they give up that for Visca, but they get Crumedy. Crumedy's a really interesting guy. Now, I like these kinds of picks in the 6th round, maybe not in the 2nd round, where you get at times he looks like a first, second day pick defensive tackle. He's got power, he's got athleticism, but it doesn't always show up. So you see what you can get out of him. And then they move down in the 6th also as part of that Deontay Johnson, Dante Jackson trade. And the last pick they get, maybe my favorite pick that they made, Michael Barrett. And this is a guy, we're going to talk a lot about those national champion Wolverines, right?
Mm-hmm.
He was really, I know that Junior Colson is the one that followed Jim Harbaugh. He's going to be a green dot linebacker for the Chargers. He's the guy in IDP leagues we care about. But Barrett is an overachiever. He's a captain. He's also a good blitzer. And his athleticism is hopefully adequate. If he's adequate for the NFL athletically, this could be a very, very good pick. It's funny because if you took Wallace and Barrett and you put them together, you'd have an ideal linebacker for Ejiro Evero, who brought in Josie Jewell in the offseason. And of course, they got Shaq Thompson. So this looks like a position that they are going to need to develop someone. They got 2 guys in Wallace and Barrett.
We'll let the debate begin because Marshawn Lloyd's the best back in this class, in my opinion. But hey, Brooks, go get him.
Yeah.
Marshawn might fumble his job away. But Jaden Shurden, look at this group of undrafted. Like, we could go on. We could have done more on the undrafted guys than we could have on the drafted guys. But
Right.
Jaden Shurden, I'm telling you, just a super crazy deep dynasty. It's the only people that got to pay attention right now. And again, Shrine Bowl bong grip. There you go. Sorry, Joe. Like, Jaden Shurden has quickness. He's got great feet. He can create space with moves. And he's got speed. So
Mhm.
interesting back. Maybe he's just a change of pace guy in the pros, but that's the name that pops for me. Bloom, lots of names on this list,
Yeah,
though.
and Sheridan definitely the scat back. Every team can use a scat back out of Monmouth. I'm going to talk about Jalen Colker out of Holy Cross. They get another guy that got 200,000 plus guaranteed on an undrafted free agent. So they went out there and got their guy, uh, and he's got length, he's got ball skills, uh, new level of competition. So how does he do scaling up? This could be a guy that persists. And remember, this is a team. I mean, is Jonathan Mingo really an outside receiver in the NFL? Is Xavier Legette really an outside receiver in the NFL? Even Deontay Johnson, Adam Thielen. I mean, you're looking down this roster, wide receiver. Who do they have that can play outside? Jalen Coker. I mean, he projects as an outside receiver. Real quick note on undrafted free agents, by the way. I wanted to go back to this real quickly because Howie and Howie we trust. We love Howie.
I love him.
Interestingly enough, he just said this week that they actually rated the practice squads of other teams at the end of the season, this past season, because they looked ahead at this class, as everyone's been saying, not even enough draftable players to get into the 7th round this year. So what does that mean for the UDFAs? Philadelphia says, well, we would rather take players that have already been in the league for a year that we have some NFL intel on now
Right.
than use those roster spots, those 90-man roster spots on UDFAs. But if you're Carolina and you're Dan Morgan in your first year as GM, you say, no, let's get some of our guys in here, even if they are from an inferior class.
Collect them all. New Orleans Saints, Bloom. Let's talk about that. And yeah, I'll get to Spencer Rattler. Talise Fuaga, Oregon State offensive tackle in the first round. Some in the scouting community were saying he might be the best tackle in this class. So there you go. Kool-Aid McKinstry, Bo Nix's teammate. It is the Broncos show in high school. Kool-Aid there at corner in the second. If he was a first rounder, I wouldn't have been surprised. Goes in the second round. Certainly feisty, certainly fights for the ball. Now, they don't pick until the 5th round and then take Spencer Rattler. So for his fans out there, first off, I appreciate when I talked to him at the Senior Bowl kind of about his journey, because I asked why he didn't give up. Because so many guys in his situation would be embarrassed and just give up because he's the man coming out of high school, right? And Netflix and a quarterback, like all that. And then he fails miserably. And he goes to South Carolina and he fails some more, but he still sticks with it. He still fights. So I like that about him, Bloom. But anytime someone brings up Spencer Rattler, I'm like, tell me what he does that's elite. Tell me anything. You know, does he have elite accuracy? No. Does he take care of the ball? Not at all. He's a turnover machine. Does he have elite arm strength? No. Is he an elite athlete? No. So it's like, okay, what moxie?
Huh.
We're drafting on moxie. So like, and remember, New Orleans was in. They liked Michael Penix. They liked Bo Nix. They do not like JJ McCarthy. Anyway, so Rattler in the 5th. It's a conversation. We'll see. Maybe I'm totally wrong and he's the greatest ever and they got the new Tom Brady. I don't care. But like, all right, let's not get too excited here. Bub Means, Pittsburgh wide receiver in the 5th. Jalen Ford, Texas linebacker in the 5th. 6th round. Christian Boyd, I love him. Northern Iowa defensive tackle. Saw him on the Shrine Bowl. Like, that's a guy that can play inside and he's got developmental upside and could hang with the best seniors in the nation. Josiah Enzerim, Eastern Kentucky offensive tackle in the 7th round. So here's what you get to watch and Saints fans get to root for, Bloom.
Yeah, team may be in on Penix, maybe, at least according to James Palmer. So this team is looking ahead to their potential needs for sure. This is a team that needed Ryan Ramczyk. I could get into the New Orleans healthcare system if anyone wants to talk a little bit more about Ryan Ramczyk. Again, Michael Thomas got into it. Michael Thomas got into this and said, yeah, they give the same rehab packet to everybody, no matter what your injury is. Michael Thomas knows a little bit about slow rehab with the Saints. So they needed a tackle. They got a tackle. Maybe he ends up at guard. He's going to be a good offensive lineman. You know that much. Strong. So, see, we can sort these offensive linemen out. I don't want to be too overbroad, but, we have the dancing bears, and then we have the guys that are the road graders. And Flaga's more of a road grader than a dancing bear. Maybe that's why he ends up at guard. We'll see. They move up for McKinstry. Smart. I mean, this is a guy going into this year was probably the number one corner going into this year. Smart. He's got length. Um, not necessarily a speed merchant. And on tape with Terry Arnold, who went ahead of him, Terry Arnold moved ahead of him during the season. Just doesn't play as hot as Arnold. But this cuts both ways. This next part, found a Jones fracture in his foot, and he still ran a 40 with it. And he ran 4.47, so maybe he's faster than we think. And it certainly says something to his competitiveness. You have other guys, and I'm not knocking the other guys for doing this. You have other guys saying, why am I going to work out? What am I going to prove? It's all there on tape. You got the data from the chip, it's all there. I'm not going to bother with this. He said, I got a broken bone in my foot. I'll still run, and ran well. Can have surgery, but I think that's a player worth trading up for. Their second round pick. You remember that debacle? Well, looking back, it's a debacle when they got 2 first round picks from the Eagles and gave up a whole mess of picks, including 2 first round picks and this second round pick. The second round pick they used on McKinstry, which they had to move up, was actually from the Sean Payton trade. They didn't have a third round pick because of the Sean Payton trade too. They didn't have a fourth round pick because of the Jake Haener trade. So it's not a great thing when you give up a fourth round pick to get a quarterback last year, and then you take another quarterback in the 5th round. I know Ron Wolf take a quarterback every year, but you would think if Haener was developing well, and maybe the heir or at least a bridge after Derek Carr, why are you taking Rattler? Cease Rattler. I suppose you're right. There's nothing elite that Rattler does, but arm talent is there, and like you said, he's resilient. So I mean, it's quarterback. If third day pick a quarterback, is there a chance? You're telling me there's a chance? I mean, at least
Wouldn't you
maybe.
want a chance on Joe Milton in that arm and that brain? Joe
Sure,
Milton's really
sure,
smart, or Devin
sure.
Leary in that arm. Like, that's my
Right,
argument against Spencer Rattler is like,
right,
at least give me the guy with the cannon,
right.
right?
Well,
And
you're
if you
you're
get Joe
remembering.
Milton, you get a guy that's really smart too.
Right. You're remembering too much like what Rattler could have been or what we thought he was going to be. So
Right,
you're right,
right.
Aziz. I mean, we can get into like where should you allot your assets because we'll talk about other quarterbacks where maybe the best way to allot your assets for a quarterback on the third day is not someone that you project as a future starter, but someone that you say, hey, it's going to be a solid backup, because if that's a win, if you can draft your backup on the third day, that's a win. They take another shot at least at a backup here. Bub Means has got speed, and Derek Carr might not be the best quarterback to take advantage of that. Ford is a good linebacker. He's always around the ball. He's got good instincts. Again, why is he a third day pick? He doesn't have the athleticism, the tools that teams really value at linebacker. Compare that to Trevin Wallace. Again, if you could put Ford's instincts in Trevin Wallace, we have maybe a first round pick. Boyd, one of those immovable objects against the run. And interesting here, they traded a late pick to get Mark Ingram again, but then they got a late pick back when they traded Will Lutz, and they used that pick on Ezerim, who's a developmental offensive lineman. It's got some upside. So not a super exciting draft for the Saints, but at least they are making up for some of their mistakes and having to live with others.
Yes, undrafted for the Saints. Dallin Holker's right there, CSU
Yeah,
tight end.
yeah.
He's got a nose for the end zone. He did not run well at the combine, and he did not run well at his pro day, and he did not perform well at the Shrine. I know I'm really selling it, right? And he,
Well, that's why he's undrafted. Yeah.
yeah, and he didn't perform well at the Shrine Bowl as a blocker. The dude's a receiver. He's got great hair, really good young man. I like him a lot. But like when you're not going to block and you don't run well, it's just. But he's got pad speed, so again, super crazy deep dynasty. Put a pin in it.
Yeah, we'll see. The other guy I'm going to mention here is Mason Tipton, a
Yes.
speed merchant out of Yale. So another speedy, and it'll be interesting. Anytime you have a third day pick and you have an undrafted free agent that have overlap, like Means and Tipton, always like watching in rookie mini camp and camp who's starting to edge ahead because the good organizations will throw draft capital out the door right away. Bad organizations might stick with players for too long that they spent a lot to get and not play players that they didn't spend a lot to get. But that is for another show.
Yes, another time. Tampa Bay Buccaneers up next, and it's Graham Barton, Duke Center. There at the end of the first round. I so thought they were going to get Chop, but they didn't get Chop. They got Graham there in the interior offensive line. And our friend Matt Miller, before the draft, said, hey, Barton's going to go earlier than y'all think. So, yeah, here we go, Tampa Bay. They got him. Chris Braswell, Alabama edge. I could make the argument that he should have been a late first round pick. In fact, if they take Braswell, just flip their 2 picks. It's like, okay, that makes sense. But they flipped him. They got their guy. Third round, Tyke Smith, Georgia safety. Third round, Jalen McMillan, Washington wide receiver. Remember the pass catchers that Michael Penix had? They're a lot, and they're awesome. McMillan's part of that group. Bucky Urban can make some plays. Fourth round pick out of Oregon. Now, they'll list him in a running back bloom. I think he's a slot receiver that happens to play running back. So we'll see how he's used. An interesting chess piece for that Tampa offense. Can certainly make plays in space and can flip the field at any moment. Elijah Klein, UTEP, 2-step OG, 6th round pick. And Devin Culp wraps things up. Another Washington Husky there, tight end in the 7th round.
Yeah, they get up with Barton. That was the pick for the Steelers in most mock drafts. And I think if they hadn't gotten Fautanu to fall to them, then it would have been a fine pick. If the Steelers had taken Graham Barton, I'd say, okay, this is better than Najee Harris, better than Kenny Pickett. I'll take it. He's going to be probably the Ryan Jensen replacement, but he's got versatility to play all over the offensive line. Braswell is a power edge, and we can remember back to Bud Dupree and Zadarius Smith, and how Bud Dupree was the gaudy measurables, projectable guy, and Zadarius Smith was just the power lunch pail edge. Smith, obviously, the much better pro. I'm not saying that Dallas Turner is Bud Dupree, but Chris Braswell could be Zadarius Smith. You also have in Smith a box safety. I don't know if you want to leave mountain coverage. I'm not sure about taking him in the 3rd round. McMillan, I am sure about taking in the 3rd round. And this was the pick they got for Carlton Davis, who's now with the Lions. Just a crafty slot. And you could really see him. He's not the player that Chris Godwin is, but if Godwin leaves in free agency next year, can McMillan step in and at least occupy some of those roles? Yeah, I like this pick a lot. I think McMillan's going to be a better pro than Polk, but that yet to be seen. Irving, like you said, he's undersized. Maybe an upgrade from Chase Edmonds, right? A Chase Edmonds upgrade. Yep. And Chase Edmonds was also a guy that coming out of college, I said he could be a slot receiver. So very similar overlap here in terms of a profile. Irving, very productive. Athleticism is a question. Tested terribly, but then again, so did Kyron Williams. They gave up a pick to get Trey Palmer, so they're missing a pick on their board there. They get Klein for some depth. Culp is fascinating just because he's fast. He's like tight end, move tight end size, but runs below a 4.5. Now, how can you? And he has good hands. Now, running routes, and again, how do you unlock that? This is work in progress. This is why he falls to the end of the draft, but you get not one, but 2 Michael Penix pass catchers on a rival of the team that Penix ended up on.
Yes. Tampa Bay undrafted free agents. What, the Barton kid?
Yeah.
Is that who we're going to talk about?
Cam Johnson.
He's fast. Yeah. Cam Johnson. He's fast, and, put a pin in it. We'll see.
First player to get an NFL contract from Barton. They had mothballed their football program for like 70 years.
Where is Barton? Like, where is that?
Let's take a moment out. Let's take a moment to take a trip to Barton College, Wilson, North Carolina. It's a liberal arts school. It looks like average cost is 23%, 23,000, 55%. A small school, only 1,265 students. Their colors are blue and silver, and they are the Barton Bulldogs. Congratulations, Barton Bulldogs, getting Cam Johnson to the NFL.
There you go. That is a wrap for the NFC South. Everyone, thank you very much for listening. You may be watching this on YouTube. If so, like, comment, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell so that you never miss a vid, as we appreciate you all. He's Sigmund. I'm Cecil. We are the Audible. Everyone, thanks for watching. Stay tuned and stay frosty. And we're back. It is the Audible, Cecil Lammy and Sigmund Bloom talking about the draft recap. The Houston Texans. Who needs a first-round pick when you've got C.J. Stroud, right? Okay, let's get it done. Second-round picks, they got 2 of them. Kamari Lassiter, Georgia, cornerback. Again, he could have been a first-round pick. Blake Fisher, Notre Dame offensive tackle in the 2nd there as well. Kalen Bullock, USC safety in the 3rd. Cade Stover, Ohio State tight end, a very interesting tight end. One of those, Ben Sinnott, Jared Wiley, Cade Stover, all of these guys after Brock Bowers that have some interest. Well, the Texans got one of those guys. Good job there. Jamal Hill, Oregon linebacker in the 6th. Also, Jordan, Louisville running back from Louisville, Solomon Boyd, USC edge in the 7th, Marcus Harris, Auburn defensive tackle, who I like, in the 7th, and Ladarius Henderson, Michigan offensive tackle in the 7th. And this is what happens when you're in a Super Bowl window and you can draft well, even without a first round pick.
Yeah, they trade out of the first to get that second round pick next year from Minnesota that they then turn into Stephon Diggs. So that worked out. Now, the idea for Nick Caserio here is most teams 15 to 20 first round picks are sitting at 23. Probably not going to get a first rounder on your board. Yeah, except Terry and Arnold fell to 23. So corners fell in the first round. There was some reports, who knows how true they are, that the Texans were trying to trade back up into the first round. Awkward when you traded out of the first round 2 months before the draft. But still, they get in Lassiter in the second round, a good cover corner, SEC battle-tested cover corner. He ran a 4.64. So this is a great test, a Rorschach ink blot for scouting department, right? You can watch him in the SEC. He rarely gives up receptions in the SEC, okay? But he ran a 4.64. That's why he's a second round pick. But if he plays like a first round pick, maybe he'll play like a first round pick in the NFL. Fisher, again, good organizations taking developmental offensive tackles in this draft because the class is so deep that teams might be willing. Miami did this, Kansas City did this. Teams that would reach for these guys if this wasn't such a great offensive tackle class. Instead of Fisher, maybe some people had him fall into the third. Right tackle, he got overtaken by Joe Alt. He was the left tackle. Joe Alt comes, and now he's the right tackle. All the pieces are there. Hasn't come together yet. It's fine. Second round pick, developmental offensive tackle. Bullock, center fielder, slot corner cover guy. They did give up a fourth to move up and get him. They gave up another pick in the Will Anderson trade. They lost. They get a fourth from the Watson deal, and they actually got they moved back up, giving up their 2025 fifth to get they love Stover. They love Stover. See, so I bet they had Stover as like a second round pick. The way that they gave up a future pick to go up and get him, and the way they're talking about him, they love Stover. Maybe what Brevin Jordan wasn't for them, and with blocking capacity too. So I think this is a guy to watch. Yes, they have Dalton Schultz signed to a 3-year deal right now, so fantasy impact is going to be delayed. Usually is for rookie tight ends anyway. They gave up a pick to get or moved down to the 7th round from the 5th to get Josh Jones. That didn't work out. Josh Jones is on Baltimore's roster now. Hill is a light but speedy running back. Well, if you're linebacker. If you're light at linebacker, you better be speedy. They gave up pick to get Xavier Hutchinson last year. So they get Jordan, your scat back. Again, Jordan actually, I like this. I like Jordan with Joe Mixon. I like the contrast. I think that's an interesting combination. And then their 7th round pick they gave up to get Joe Mixon, and they had more 7th round picks. They got one from the Mark Ingram trade. They get a developmental edge in Bird. Harris is a one gap shooter, the tackle, maybe eat some snaps for you. And Henderson, talk about Michigan again, developmental left tackle. He was Michigan's left tackle this past year. So yeah, why not spend a pick at the end of the draft to develop him?
Yeah, let's talk about undrafted free agents, and I had to double check because there's two of them.
Double.
Because the Twins that I saw at
Yep.
the Shrine Bowl, South Dakota State Jackrabbits, baby, Jaden Yonke, but they got Jackson Yonke, who is considered to be the superior of the Twins. His outside guy has got some speed, and it was fun seeing the Twins out there. You're like, which one? Jaden Jackson? What? And it's Yonke,
Yonke,
not
yeah.
Yankee. So there you go.
See, and I'll give you an update to
Sure,
this.
sure.
They actually signed both. It's a
Nice.
package deal. It was a package deal in college. It's
I
probably
love it.
why they might have been able to be recruited. They were talking about playing college basketball. They might have been able to be recruited separately to bigger programs, although South Dakota State is becoming a football hotbed.
Yes, it is.
But they were a package deal in college. I don't think they were necessarily a package deal. I want to say that Jaden got more. It's interesting. Like they're gonna know who got more money, right? They're gonna know. I think that Jaden got something like 110,000 guaranteed, but they get both these guys, wide receivers that are run good routes, have good hands, athletically. We'll see if they can hang. But the other thing you got to love here is these farm boys, Bear twins, born on the farm, and now they're gone and played college football together, and they're at least going to go to their first NFL rookie minicamp together, and we'll see what happens from there.
Yeah, we'll see it. Love it, love it, love it. Indianapolis Colts up next, and Latu. The Colts were considering moving up. Everyone wanted in on the Roma Dunze thing. You weren't getting Roma Dunze, but you get Latu as long as he's healthy. I mean, the dude's a beast. Multiple
Yeah.
moves to get after the passer. We'll see what happens there. And you get your wide receiver. Here's the thing: if you could go into the future and into the past and time travel, which maybe you do with music, Bloom,
Yeah.
you could say, hey, you're not going to get a Dunze, but you're gonna get a Donnie Mitchell. Like, wouldn't you be happy with that? Like, you should be if you start out with Mitchell and Latu as your first two picks. It's a strong start for the Colts. See if it works out, Cotton. Matt Goncalves, sorry. Pittsburgh offensive tackle in the third. Tanner Bortolini, Wisconsin center in the fourth. Anthony Gould, Oregon State wide receiver there in the fifth. The Jalen Carley's Missouri safety in the fifth. Jalen Simpson, Auburn safety in the fifth. Doubling up there. Micah Abraham, Marshall corner in the sixth. And then the seventh is Jonu Laulu, Oklahoma defensive tackle.
The tongue twister draft class. Latu, Chris Ballard, I think very rightfully excited to get the first defensive player chosen at the number 15 pick. And like you said, Cease, it medically retired from football. Peyton Manning's doctor comes in and says, nah, you can still play football. And he comes back and he's just awesome on the edge. He's everything you want as an edge rusher. And the Colts get him. You get Mitchell. What you love about Mitchell, you want to talk about an all-time sorry Joe moment. Watch Chris Ballard defending this pick, okay, and they gave up a couple. They got a couple of fifths. They remember this is actually they traded down with Carolina. That's where Carolina goes up and get Brooks, and they get 2 extra fifths, and they still get Mitchell. And again, an all-time sorry Joe moment among NFL coaches in a press conference or NFL GMs. But what you love here, Cease, because what was the deal with Mitchell? You look at the athleticism and even how the athleticism can be applied at times, tracking the ball, making crazy catches in the air, the speed to get open deep. But it was so inconsistent. There's some stuff came out about maybe type 1 diabetes was an issue here. And if you can manage that, if you can help him manage that, you're going to get the good side instead of the low side. This was a guy who a lot of people had in the first round. And I think as the draft got closer, we could see maybe he wasn't going to go in the first round, but it still was surprising to see him fall as far in the second round as he did. And what's appropriate about this season, you can talk about this if you want with Ballard, is that there was a lot of sorry Joe moments when they asked him, what do you think about like what people were saying about Mitchell? And he was saying, he's a good kid. And then lots and lots of bad language to show just how I think he was probably angry, honestly, at how Mitchell was treated in the pre-draft process. And he was coming right out of the box defending him.
Yep.
So if you're going to start a story of like, how does Mitchell become the best case? It's having your GM defend you. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's because Ballard's a good man and he knows ball. So like, listen,
Yeah.
Linda, listen.
And for fantasy, maybe you don't love Mitchell because this is not going to be a high volume pass offense and they have a lot of good targets already. But for the team and for Anthony Richardson, yeah. Now imagine trying to cover Mitchell and Downs and Pittman. And you have to also, of course, Jonathan Taylor and Richardson are both run threats. So yeah, fun if Mitchell works out. Gonsalves. Pitt, offensive tackle, offensive guard, captain, had foot injury, good depth, maybe a starter. Another good depth guy in Bortolini. Hey, here's a good plan on the third day. Take Wisconsin offensive lineman. That usually works out okay. I hate to helmet scout, but you're going to take a center, a guard. Wisconsin usually produces some good ones. Gould, more speed. Why not? More speed. Carley's, a lot of people like this guy, Carley's. Safety linebacker tweener, but plays in a way that you want your defenders to play. And the safety linebacker tweeners, I almost wonder if we're going to invent a new position called tight end eraser or tight end coverer. like tight end corner or something like
Mm-hmm.
that. So these safety linebacker tweeners have the right size, speed, athleticism combination to mirror some of the better tight ends in the NFL. That's something really interesting to watch. Imagine him on Evan Ingram. We'll see. Simpson, a little bit small, good coverage guy, an athlete. Abraham is Donnie Abraham's son. And look, in a draft where a lot of big stories were about NFL bloodlines, Donnie Abraham's son, who is on the ball all the time. If you look at his production, dude's as a cornerback. He's always got his hands around the ball. And okay, he's small, he's a little bit undisciplined, but the late round pick, yeah, I'll take that. And then they get Laulu, who again, it's Chris Ballard. If the Colts had a draft and they drafted a bunch of guys who were below average in athletic testing, then you'd say, who kidnapped Chris Ballard? What happened to Chris Ballard? Because you always know a Colts draft because they highly value athleticism more than most teams. So on the third day, they get an athletic defensive tackle with some upside in Laulu.
Let's talk about undrafted free agents for the Colts and Keaton Slovis,
Yeah.
BYU. How many schools did he go to?
Right.
And I talked to him at the Shrine Bowl. What was funny, Bloom, is his quarterback coach he was working with in the offseason was none other than John Beck. I didn't
Ah.
tell him I didn't like John Beck at the Shrine
Well, it
game.
was just his cadence, though,
Yes,
right?
yes, it was just his cadence. It was his mouse quiet cadence. But our very first, and I did share this story with Slovis. I was like, I've been doing this since 2007, and Beck was, one of the guys saw down in Houston. I mean, Slovis is one of those high school guys that just never. He went everywhere. I mean, well, literally, what, like 4 schools? Top of my
3.
head,
But he
3.
was a
Okay,
starter and a captain at all 3.
yeah, 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 yeah. So it's like, okay, I'm taking a shot. I'd rather have Slovis than Spencer Rattler.
There we go. This is gonna be just like, I don't even want to remember who the 5th round pick was for Denver, but we're gonna be comparing all these quarterbacks to Spencer Rattler. But yeah, Cease, you're right. Look, again, speaking of Spencer Rattler, go back in time. At one point, Slovis was a freshman All-American.
Hmm.
Okay, at one point, and then he's ended up transferred. Lacks upside. He's athletic. Can you develop him to a solid backup? I think you can. So I like this for Indianapolis.
Yes. How about Jacksonville? Do you like that? Another one of those teams that really wanted to move up and then just saw talent push back to them. The talent, Brian Thomas. We're going to talk about Malik Neighbors a lot. We need to talk about Brian Thomas a lot as well for the Bayou Bengals. They double up in the second round, go Mason Smith, LSU defensive tackle there, Jerry Jones in the third, Florida State corner, Javon Foster, Missouri offensive tackle in the fourth, Jordan Jefferson. Boy, do they love those Bayou Bengals defensive tackle, and I appreciate his game there as well. DeAndre Prince, Ole Miss corner in the fifth. Keelan Robinson, Texas running back in the fifth. Cam Little, Arkansas place kicker. And Miles Cole, Texas Tech edge to round things out in the seventh.
Yeah, Trent Baalke. There was a little bit there because Baalke was kind of, sort of a package deal with Urban Meyer.
Yeah.
I mean, they came in together, and he wasn't fired when Urban Meyer was fired. And for a little bit there, it looked like, oh, okay, Baalke actually, even though we fun on some of the stuff he did, taking players with torn ACLs, that was his bag back when he was the GM of the 49ers. I was feeling better about Baalke. This draft, Cease?
Nah.
Nah, not
Nah.
feeling it. I mean, at least they trade down and pick up extra picks. They got Minnesota's 3rd and 4th actually next year. So there's that. Maybe that's the best thing they did in this. They get Brian Thomas. If they'd taken Brian Thomas at 17, no one would have blinked an eye.
Right.
It seems like that the Jags feel very burned that they did not get Calvin Ridley. Okay. And this is an attempt to, and they were trying to go up for Neighbors. They didn't get Neighbors. They get Thomas. Thomas, big, fast. How much was he helped by Neighbors being on the other side? How much was he helped by Jaden Daniels being maybe the best deep ball passer in this class? The rest of the route tree, we'll see. He's a 23rd pick, high upside guy. Let me put it this way. I feel more comfortable with what he had to work with at the time that he was drafted than what Quentin Johnson had to work with, another guy who went in the early 20s. But similar kind of prospect, like a wide receiver. Well, you've got this to build from. that's still a question mark. At the very least, he can contribute. Zay Jones got released. He can contribute right away as just a pure speed threat. Let me put it this way as we go through this draft. Boy, is Jacksonville counting on their coaching staff to develop players when you look at this draft, starting with the first round pick. Smith, big athlete, great measurables, not a finished product. That's your second round pick. They give up a pick in the Ridley trade. Jones, athlete, needs to learn to play. Foster, athlete, left tackle, needs to learn to play. Jefferson, athlete, defensive tackle, needs to learn to play. Prince, speed, corner, needs to learn to play. Keelan Robinson, speed, barely has played because he was behind Bijan Robinson and Jonathan Brooks. Maybe a kick returner, maybe a receiving back with some speed. Ezra Cleveland and Mac Jones to give up 2 6-round picks to get these guys. Cleveland's still with the team. At least Mac Jones, maybe a backup for Trevor Lawrence, and a kicker. And then the last pick, he's Cole. You want to fill in the rest?
Go for it.
He's an athlete. He's an athlete.
Yeah.
He's learned how to play.
Right.
I mean, it's one thing, Cease. It's one thing to like spend third day picks on these guys, or it's one thing to like mix and match and say like, well, this particular guy, we have the coach. We went through the whiteboard session with him. You looked into his soul in the pre-draft meeting, and we know in his our position coach, and he got along so well. So it's one thing to get a projectable player here and there where it makes sense. It's another thing when your whole draft is projectable players.
Yeah. Well, guess what? That's what they did in the UDFAs. Although a couple of my favorites, Josh Cephas, UTSA wide receiver. He's big and fast. He doesn't know what he's doing yet. West Carolina wide receiver David White, though. This perhaps was one of the biggest sleepers from the Shrine Bowl. Everyone needs to know perhaps the most consistent receiver that I saw down there. Remember, I saw Taj Washington, Malik Washington making plays down there. Love both of those guys. David White was my okay, this guy can play. Nobody knows it yet. So West Carolina, David White, super crazy deep dynasty. Everyone pick him up because there's something there, Bloom. I want to see it.
Yeah, Cephas is another good one. He's got the ball skills. We'll see if the rest can come on. They got a running back, Lorenzo Lingard, Akron, but started out at Florida, so pay a little attention to that. A lot of receivers in their undrafted free agent class, so that competition alone will be on to watch at rookie minicamp.
Yeah, let's go to the Tennessee Titans up next to wrap up the AFC South. And I had heard, and this is where my mock went astray. So my first 6 picks were 100% correct. And then it gets to 7, and I had heard Tennessee's going to do something a little different. Nah, it was J.C. Latham, Alabama offensive tackle. I think I had him taking Mims there, because Mims is so controversial with only 8 starts. But Latham, it's an Alabama offensive tackle. Okay, so Tennessee does what Tennessee's going to do. Devondre Sweat, Texas defensive tackle, didn't fall as much as some people thought because of the DWI, right?
Yeah.
And the pre-draft process. So Sweat's there. He can make plays, certainly immediate and strength right in the middle, gets off the line of scrimmage quickly. Cedric Gray, North Carolina linebacker in the 4th. Jarvis Brownlee from Louisville, cornerback in the 5th. Jaquan Jackson, Tulane. You watch Michael Pratt film, and you're going to see a lot of Jaquan Jackson with that size and speed, wide receiver in the 6th. James Williams, Miami safety in the 7th. And then Jalen Harrell, Michigan, more Wolverines, edge to go off the board in the 7th.
Yeah. I don't know about this draft.
Nah.
But, well, we'll see. We'll see about Rand Carthon and Brian Callahan and what they do in the post-Vrabel era. Latham, a lot of people have them taking Joe Alt. Alt goes at 5. They get Latham, massive, mean streak guy. When you think of offensive tackles going in the top 10, especially in a draft where quarterbacks pushed players down, you expect to get maybe a better overall prospect than Latham, but this team needs offensive line so badly. So, this was a guy a lot of people were mocking to the Chargers at 5, a power player. Instead, he ends up with Tennessee. Sweat. This one really surprised me, Cease. So this is maybe one of the moments where I'm reacting the way some of the people reacted to the Michael Penix pick, because even Dane Brugler had him as a third, fourth round pick. After Sweat got the DWI, you actually had a lot of draft experts, draft analysts, or people in touch with teams saying, well, they had him as a third, fourth round pick anyway. So how far is he going to fall now? Well, I guess the Titans didn't get that memo. I mean, look, he's a 360-pound guy who at times looks like the best mover at that size we've seen since Walter Thomas. Talk about blast from the past there. Remember Walter Thomas?
Oh, yeah.
I think that got us mentioned in the New York Times. Walter Thomas, who never even played a snap. Walter Thomas might still have the all-time record for getting released in his first practice, like 12 minutes in or something like that. Anyway, so Sweat can move and he's massive. And we'll see. Okay, I mean, obviously they like that there. They gave up a third round pick to get Levis last year. So ripples of the Levis pick. Cedric Gray, I like this Cedric Gray pick. In IDP leagues, you need to know this guy because he doesn't really have any meaningful obstacles, I think, to being the green dot linebacker for this team as soon as he's ready. They gave up a pick in the Dennis Daly trade a few years back. They get Brownlee, aggressive, tough corner. He can also be beaten. So that's why he's a third day pick. Jaquan Jackson, Darnell Mooney's understudy. And you see how that could help him get to where he's gotten now as an NFL draft pick, speed. James Williams, here's another tight end eraser. Is he a safety? Is he a linebacker? He has a size of a linebacker, some athletic traits of a safety, falls to the 7th round. It'll be interesting to see what they do with him. And then time to talk about another Michigan player, Michigan's best edge player, Harrell. And again, I like, so it doesn't have to be an either or, it can be both. On the third day, it's great to take athletes that you think you can coach up. But on the third day, it's also great to take players like Harrell, who were productive in a championship winning program, but he's just a linear athlete. I mean, as an edge, he's not bendy. He's not shot out of a gun. He's not even really overwhelming power player. He's just a guy that wins with smarts, effort, motor, and sometimes those guys end up a lot better than we think in the NFL.
Yeah, let's talk about the undrafted free agents for Tennessee. How did Dylan Johnson fall undrafted? I mean, maybe medicals, right?
Right.
Anytime someone that should be a day 3 pick, and then they're like, okay, they fall undrafted. Okay, is there some sort of medicals? With Johnson, there was like a hip and a knee stuff, but very talented player, confident runner. So we'll see what Dylan Johnson can do on Tennessee as a UDFA.
Yeah, Matt Waldman favorite. Doesn't quite fit in the same mold as Pollard and Tyjae Spears, but that's a good thing, right? Because maybe a little more rugged inside runner than they are, not as dynamic of a runner as those two can be. We'll see if he can make the team over another Michigan guy, Hassan Haskins.
Yeah, there we go. It is a wrap. Now you got me going down a Walter Thomas wormhole.
The good old days.
The good old days. And the New York Times mentioning us because Walter Thomas can do a backflip and he's 380 pounds.
Exactly. He can do a backflip and he's 380 pounds and he doesn't belong with an NFL organization.
And, well, that's what happens, right? That's what happens. You go to practice, you don't perform.
Yeah. Not for everybody.
That was Sean Payton, right? That was
I
Sean Payton
think
that cut him because the
2006,
Saints, 2007.
Yeah.
2007. Yeah.
Yeah.
Guess
Ask
what
him
I'm
about
asking
Walter.
Sean about?
See if he
I
remembers
know.
Walter Thomas.
He remembers everything. What's funny is when he talks about Pierre Thomas, he doesn't like to talk about Antonio Pittman.
Huh.
He doesn't use his name. I think he doesn't want to like throw him under the bus or whatever. But he's like, we had an undrafted guy who's better than the guy we took in the 4th. And so when he said that at one of his press conferences last August, I was like, oh, that's Antonio Pittman. Like, why aren't you just say it? Say it with your chest. Like, say it. Like, say it. So yeah, I'm gonna ask Sean about Walter Thomas.
Yeah, it's good stuff, man. I mean, the draft. Sometimes some of the best stories are the stories that have zero NFL impact.
Who was the dude that jumped out of the pool that we liked?
Oh
Remember?
gosh, I remember the picture, but
Toledo, maybe.
I don't know. Get back, folks. This is your cliffhanger for the West recaps. We're gonna look that up and we're gonna try to figure out who that was.
All right, he is Sigmund Bloom. You follow him on Twitter at Sigmund Bloom. You may be watching us on YouTube. Like, comment, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell so that you never miss a vid. We appreciate you all very much. We are the Audible. Stay tuned, and would you please stay frosty,